physical training, self-defense training, firearms training, situational awareness, and the warrior mindset. Welcome to the Condition 1 podcast. This is a podcast where we'll be talking about Welcome to the Condition 1 podcast. This is a podcast where we'll be talking about being ready. We'll also be speaking to victim survivors of physical encounters, how they dealt with the aftermath, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Welcome to the Condition 1 podcast with me, your host, John Riddle. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Crestwood Technology Group. CTG supplies the defense and aviation industries with critical parts and materials designed to keep fleets and systems operational, ready, and safe. Check out the Crestwood Technology Group at ctgnow.com. Okay, this is an introduction for Mr. Nick Hughes, former French Foreign Legionnaire. He has worked on personal protection specialists around the world, working with clients such as members of the Saudi royal family, musicians, actors, businessmen. He is an author of an Amazon bestseller, How to Be Your Own Bodyguard. Nick's martial arts background is extensive. He's got black belts in Aikido, Judo, Ju-jutsu, Goju, Shito-Ryu karate, and many others. He holds instructor certifications in unarmed combat, World War II combatives, and violent patient management. He practices the Filipino martial arts and has boxed professionally and kickboxed in the amateur level. Man, you got started young. 16 years old?
8 years old.
8 years old into the martial arts. Okay. And at 16, which kind of intrigued me, and there's a lot, we hear a lot about working the doors, bouncing. Mm-hmm. Right? In the States, it's not as prevalent as it is in the UK or Australia. Okay, working the doors there, from what I believe, at least what I've heard and learned, is that's actually a professional business. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely. And it blew me away when I came to America. I was training some of the guys who just happened to bounce on a Friday and Saturday in one of the bars. And they asked me to come up and do some training with their crew. And I walked in and I said, all right, let me check out all your equipment. I'm like, what equipment? And I said, well, you got flashlights and a notepad for taking details down to report things to the cops. And you better have a little first aid kit and a spare shirt. And they had none of this. The bars over here hire these college jocks for very little money, who love doing it because they get girls' phone numbers and free drinks in exchange for standing on the door and throwing out troublemakers. Sure. You go to the UK, I've got friends of mine in their 60s who've been doing this since they were 20. That is their career. And they'll work 4 or 5 nights a week. Now, when I was just leaving England, they were bringing in the professional. It now became government regulated after a couple of kids were nearly killed the back of a nightclub in London, and they were thrown into a dumpster, and the government went, enough is enough. They brought in, I believe the organization's called the SIA, and one of the companies I worked for was instrumental in setting it up and working with the government on what the requirements would be. But now you have it like the police, you have a number on your jacket so you can be identified. You have to go through a training program, which of course is a joke, with some come-along holds. They go into what are the laws on search and seizure. So if a woman's coming into a bar, can I search her handbag? Because a lot of the times the girls would smuggle in drugs or knives or whatever in their purse, and you can pat a guy down, but what can the bouncer do in relation to a woman? How far can he go through her stuff? So yeah, it became this. It's a career, and guys will do it their entire lives. You'll see them, in their 50s and 60s, and they've been doing that job for 30 years. They get really, really good at it.
That's amazing. That's pretty cool to hear that it's regulated like that.
Yep.
Where you have, instead of having a group of knuckle draggers at the door, you've got some educated individuals there. that can
Australia,
de-escalate.
Australia followed their lead. It was probably about 5 years after the UK went, and actually that's all over Europe now. It went through France and Germany, Spain, all the bouncers everywhere go through that. And then Australia followed their lead, probably because of the ties to the Commonwealth. But getting back to your thing about how I started at 16, I was in a karate organization, and their whole forte was security. They played around with tournaments, but we were famous for doing self-defense, applied karate. And we ran security in pretty much every single major nightclub in every major city in Australia. We did the crowd control for all the rock and roll concerts. And a lot of the guys went on to be personal bodyguards for the rock and roll stars. They loved us. They we supplied with bodyguards over here in the States, and they'd get ex-Secret Service guys running around in suits and ties with short back and sides. They came out to us. We looked like members of the band. We all had long hair and tattoos, and they thought that was great. And a lot of those guys are still working with bands today. So, yeah, I was lucky to be in that organization. I tagged along with my brother at age 15, and he'd start throwing me scraps. Like he'd toss me some little drunk guy and go drag him out while I deal with his mate. And I think it helped that I was 6'3" and 200 pounds when I was 16. So I wouldn't have got away with it if I was small.
Sure. Wow. So, growing up Australia, tell me about it.
Oh, mate, I think it was good because from a fighting perspective, from a self-defense perspective, you couldn't get away now with what we got away with then. So a couple of things play into that. Number one, Aussies by nature like fighting, right? We grow up playing rugby, which is like your football minus the helmets, minus the brakes, minus the padding. And every kid grows up playing that. So we smash the crap out of each other from a very young age. The alcohol content down there is way higher than what it is here. And so by midnight in all of these clubs, these guys are hammered and they want to fight. Another thing was the cops gave the bouncers pretty much free rein for the longest time, because the last thing a cop wants to do, right, is go in and break up a bar fight. Because he walks into a bar with 800 people, he's the enemy. And the crowd will often turn on him, and then you've got drunk women screaming, "My handbag was stolen," or they get into a cat fight with another girl. That's absolutely the last thing a cop wants to do, is deal with that. So here are we standing on the front door taking care of business for them. And, we'd drag the guys out and stack them up, and then they'd either wander off, or the cops would come and take them, or an ambulance would pick them up and take them to the hospital. And they just left us alone as long as we didn't overstep the mark. And then, sadly, you got the steroid bouncers in. And these are the guys massively insecure, pumping themselves up with weights. And they'd bash some 16-year-old underage kid. And someone did that to one of the politicians' nephews or something. And that changed overnight. They passed a rule and they came down on us hard. But for the longest time, yeah, it was a unique environment where we could. Basically, it was a laboratory for what you learned in the dojo. I trained in the evening, and then I ran to the club where I worked. And what I just learned in class, I was getting to see if it really worked in a real environment.
And that used to go around here in the States, where guys would learn something in the dojo, and then they would go out at night, infiltrate the bars, and pick fights, and try to test out what they've learned. So it's very interesting to see that it was done there with you, but for a different cause. So growing up, you seem like you grew up in a pretty tough atmosphere, grew up pretty fast.
Well, actually, it wasn't. I went to a private school. My parents were very, very upper middle class in the socioeconomic strata. And I think that's why I was fascinated so much with the rougher side of things. I'd had a disease when I was a kid where I wasn't allowed to do sports. So I sat around and read a lot of mystery books and James Bond and soldiers. I was fascinated with the whole, World War II commando movies, The Dirty Dozen, The Devil's Brigade, all that stuff. I'd watch that. Fascinated with it, and I couldn't do team sports until I was about 12. So I ended up joining the judo club at school, And my parents didn't know because I hadn't been cleared medically for it. And that was when I was 8. And I fell in love with the self. We do 30 minutes of jiu-jitsu at the end of class, and I just fell in love with it. I don't know why. So yeah, it was a weird environment because I'd come from this private background, but here I am in the roughest club in town. And I think that bears mentioning too. We're talking about, you know, the opportunities I had. I ended up working in a strip club. And the big advantage to that was I learned how to fight multiple opponents really quick because the strip club didn't attract any female clientele. You'd get a guy who works at a car dealership or the local shipyard or a builder's crew, right? And he's going to get married. What's the first thing he does? Or what's the last thing he does before he ties the knot, right? The night before he goes out on his stag party and he drags 20 or 30 of his mates with him. And we were the only strip club in town. So they'd turn up at our place. So you got table loads of these gangs of anywhere from 4 to 40 guys getting hammered, right? Hooting and hollering at the strippers. And the strippers, by the way, it's funny. I came here bodyguarding Warrant, first time in America. And they said, we're going to a strip club. And I went, okay. And we walked inside and there's a chick with a bikini bottom on spinning around the bar on the pole on a bar. And I went, well, where do we go inside the club? And they went, this is it. And I went, dude, this is a beach in France. What are you talking about? I mean, she's wearing a bikini bottom. When do they strip? And they're like, oh, no, they're not allowed to take the bottom half off. I'm like, wow. So Australia, it was full nudity and, you know, all sorts of craziness going on stage. And these guys would get hammered around midnight, like I said, and then they'd start trying to grope the waitresses who were topless. And we'd get told, you know, these guys aren't listening. We'd come in and go, fellas, you have to leave. And they'd look down the table and go, well, there's 20 of us and 3 of you. And it'd be on. So I did that 6 nights a week for 6 years. So I got loads and loads and loads of experience of fighting multiple opponents, which bouncer friends in more high-end clubs didn't get to see. You know, they might get 2 incidents a week where they'd escort, you know, some highfalutin guy out wearing a tuxedo and they'd take him by the arm and escort him outside. So big environmental change. And I think that was fortunate and unfortunate for me that I got some real life experience that a lot of guys never got.
Yeah. And you're able to pass that on, which I think is pretty cool, you know. So coming up as you get older, as you're getting older and you're in this business, what led you to to become a Legionnaire?
The organization I was with, like I said, they had bodyguards, right? They supplied bodyguards to rock and roll stars. And that was my goal because that was sort of the going through the ranks in the school. You started as a brown belt working on the door of a club. Then you got to do crowd control at a concert. Then you got to work backstage. You sort of worked your way closer and closer to these celebrities. And a lot of the heroes in that school that I had, including the chief instructor, were bodyguards for people like Fleetwood Mac, Rolling Stones. My mate still looks after Billy Joel. He's been doing that now for 30 plus years. So these guys I looked up to and I wanted to do that, but I was a hothead from coming out of the strip club and the organization wouldn't let me bodyguard. So I said, to hell with you. I looked even further into this as a career choice, and I liked what the whole diplomatic protection thing, right, which we didn't do. And everyone said, if you want to do that, you're going to have to go to the States or Europe. So it was easier for me to get to Europe because we're part of the Commonwealth, right? So my grandparents were English, so I could live there without an issue. And I flew into London with my black belt in hand and went around to these couple of agencies that supply bodyguards. I'd done my research. And I knock on the door and I'm like, you know, I'm here to save you all. And they said, what's your background? And I said, oh, I'm a black belt. I'm from Australia. And they just laughed. They said, dude, we use ex-special forces, right? You have to be SAS, SBS, Royal Marine Commando. And they explained it to me. It's very, very clever. If you've been in the SAS, the government has vetted you, right? So they know your background's clean.
Right.
You've had a psychological evaluation. You're physically fit. You can take orders. You can follow directions. You're used to standing around all day in a uniform. All right. You can work as part of a team. You've probably rotated through Northern Ireland, so you've got weapons experience. You've been shot at. You've learned to keep a cool head. You know how to deal with explosives. So all the training's been done for the agency by the government, and they just hire
Sure.
these guys when they're retired and find them clients. And I'm there, what was I, 24, built like a brick shithouse with a black belt. And they just laughed and said, dude, you got to get military experience. And that meant waiting 4 years to get into the British Army, turning around and going back home and joining the Australian Army, or going over and getting in the Legion. And the big advantage to the Legion, and I talked to a guy who'd been in it, and he was on a team at the time looking after the Jordanians. And he said, mate, if the Legion takes you, they'll take you tomorrow. And he said, the big thing is you can learn any languages you want in there, because there's like 165, 190 nationalities, depending. It'll be depending on which unit you end up in. And he said, you'll learn French for sure, and you can pick up anything else you want. And that's what I did.
Very cool. Very cool. So what experiences did you have there with them? I mean, how many years did you do with them?
The minimum contract is 5, and I went in and I signed up for the 5, right, which you got to do, and you go through that, and at the end of the 5, if you've been any good, they try and tempt you to re-up, just like our military does here.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And they really wanted me badly. I was one of the only English guys that I didn't drink. I've never drunk alcohol, because I started working on the door at 16, and I saw what drunk guys did. I'd pick up people, they'd piss themselves, shit themselves, fought with their friends. I'm like, it's supposed to be fun, and it didn't look like it. So I never acquired a taste for alcohol. So it's probably the only English guy that never went in and got in a fight with the French and ended up being stuck in the brig. And I had some natural leadership qualities, and they wanted me to stay on and do the full 20, 25 years. You can opt for either one. And I'd already lined up a bodyguard job. I'd gone training with a guy called Lofty Wiseman and Dennis Martin, who ran Europe's only non-military bodyguard training school. And I'd gone through that, and they said, when you get out, you call us, we'll have work. And I had a job lined up already, so I got to the end of the 5, and that's what I did.
So how you did your time as a Legionnaire, then you get out and you get into the private sector. Can you explain to me how that time as a Legionnaire prepared you for what you're doing in your next step of your life?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said about why these agencies hire ex-military guys, right? I had learned, it's pretty hard going from heading a karate school in Australia with, 65 students. You say jump, they say how high, you say shit, they say what color. And here I am taking orders from little 5'2" Frenchmen, screaming and yelling at me. So you learn a lot about, standing around in a uniform on guard duty all day is no different than standing around on a door in a hotel in a suit and tie. You work as part of a team, which a lot of the times bouncing, I'd work with 1 or 2 guys. Here you're working with 30 people. I learned French, shitty accent and a really rough version of it. They say you learn French. It's kind of like a French guy coming over here and being stuck in prison for 5 years and saying he learned English. But it gets you by, all right? And I picked up bits and pieces. I knew we were doing a lot of work with the Arabs, having talked to Dennis about it. That was a big part of it, what they call the circuit in England, which is the group of bodyguards that work. You look after the Saudis. So I picked up some bits and pieces of Arabic, and that helped living in Marseille in France too, in Africa. Familiarity with weapons, and especially the European weapon systems. What else? Yeah, I mean, some unarmed combat and stuff, explosive identification, patrol. We've done some, advanced work stuff, and all of that translated directly to being a bodyguard. So yeah, it helped. It opened a lot of doors. There's also, in France, just like in England, you have agencies that are run by ex-legionnaires who also hire security. So I had this ability to go and work in France and England, which a lot of the guys, if you didn't speak a foreign language, you were pretty much limited to the UK.
Okay. All right. So you come out of the Legionnaires. Now you are running your own business, your own Krav Maga school in North Carolina.
Oh, no. There's a big gap there.
Okay.
That doesn't go into the bio because it didn't pertain to martial arts. But what had happened was I've actually been an artist my whole life.
Oh, okay.
And all the black belts in Australia got a tattoo. The style was called, the head of the style was called the Red Dragon because he had flaming red hair and he was a martial artist. So every black belt, that was our logo. So every black belt in the style, when you got your black belt, you went down to the local tattoo shop and got this Red Dragon tattoo, which I did, much to my mother's chagrin. And I had gone and bodyguarded the rock band Warrant, and they'd come over with David Lee Roth. And I met them taking care of them in Europe, and their tour was cut short. They did 3 days, and Janie slipped off the stage in Birmingham and cracked his ribs. So they went back to the States and they were replaced, and the gig fell through for me. I was, assigned to another one a couple of months later. Well, Warrant tours a couple of years later, they start out, they're headlining now with Firehouse and Trickster. And they were going through bodyguards. They went through, I think, 4 in a week. They just couldn't find anyone they gelled with. And they said, let's get that Aussie from Europe. And I flew over to the States and I looked after them. We did that whole tour. It's a great tour. And in North Carolina, they had a tattoo artist who came on the bus. It's pretty funny watching a guy tattoo band members in a private bus roaring down the highway at 80 miles an hour at night. The band members are drunk. The bus is hitting potholes, bouncing up and down. How he did his lines straight, I will never know. And we were talking one night, and I had a sketchbook, and he saw it, and he said, man, you should tattoo. And I said, I have no idea how to even break into that industry. And at this point, I was already thinking about going back in the Legion. The problem I had with bodyguarding, and for any of your listeners that are thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. The reality is, one, you have no idea where your next job is coming from. Right? So I'd get off a gig in England and I'd sit there and I've got money in my pocket. And I'm like, well, can I spend this? Am I going to have another job tomorrow? Or is this going to last me for 3 months, 4 months, a year? You just don't know. And coming from the Legion, where you know every month exactly how much money you're going to get paid. All right. Sure. And they feed you and they take care of your medical and all your accommodation and everything. It's kind of sketchy sitting there. You also have no life of your own. I might want to go and see the latest James Bond movie and eat pizza, and the boss wants to go to the opera and eat Chinese. Guess what we're doing? All right. Sure. It's really hard to have a girlfriend. It's really hard to have a family because I'd be on the road for 2-3 years. Didn't know when I was coming back. And so I'm thinking about going back in the Legion. And then the idea hit me, man, if I could learn how to tattoo and take that skill set back into the Legion after hours at night, if there's no war on it, any soldier will tell you it's pretty much a 9-to-5 gig. I could sit in my room at night with my tattoo equipment and tattoo Legionnaires and make a ton of money on the side. And John the tattooer said, man, get your butt to my shop. I'll show you all the stuff you need. And I had a break. I was looking after a client, one of the probably top 25 richest guys in the world that no one knows. There's bunches of people out there, I didn't know this either, that make Muffet look like he's a kid with a piggy bank. They just never get in the public eye, so no one knows who they are. And he was on a private island in the Caribbean for 2 weeks, and they had their own security. So I was kicked loose. And I went up and saw John in the shop, and we hung out. And I started learning how to do the drawing and the tracings and the stencils. And he gave me a big list of equipment I'd need. And when I was next back in the UK, I saw a local tattoo artist. He helped me get the gear. I started practicing on my buddies. And the big plan was go in the Legion and tattoo. And the Berlin Wall had just come down. And the Legion, like every military in the world, was cutting back. We went from an effective of 12,000 people to about 7,500. And I turned up and knocked on the door and I said, you guys told me I was always welcome back. And they said, you are, but you'd have to start over. And, literally like a private in basic training again, getting screamed at and yelled at. And I said, come on, man, that's BS. My 5 years have to be worth something. And so they wouldn't take me. So I looked at setting up a shop in France, which I should have done because their tattoos, seriously, at that point in time, they were horrible. America was like so far ahead of them. And I called John and I said, mate, what have I got to do to set up a shop? And he said, mate, come work for me. And this was right in 94 when tattooing was taking the world by storm. And his shop had 50 people outside the door every Saturday morning lined up around the corner. And I turned up and got thrown into the middle of that. I'm literally like, here, tattoo this person, tattoo this person. And I'm, you know, Mickey Mouses and butterflies and Chinese characters, the way it went. And eventually ended up opening up my own shop. And a lot of the artists came and worked with. We became the #1 tattoo shop in Charlotte, North Carolina for 9 years in a row.
Wow.
And it was after 9/11 that, you know, when the shit hit the fan and America took this blow to the guts, all of these people came to me like, you teach martial arts, we need to learn that. People woke up to the fact that, you know, the police aren't there to help. They would have had to have taken care of business themselves. And then
Sure.
they looked at what was available, and you had McDojos, or if you could find a serious martial arts school, it was going to take you 5 years to get a black belt. Everyone said, isn't there something quicker? And I'd done Legion unarmed combat. And I said, well, that's what military unarmed combat's for, right? 40 hours of training and you're good to go. And so I started teaching that. We called it fight survival training. And, you know, it was really small because no one, you know, A, I didn't know how to market, but B, I wasn't interested in doing it for a living. I had the tattoo shop, so it was just helping people out. And nobody knew who the French Foreign Legion was. Most people remember, you know, what is it? Abbott and Costello movies, right?
Sure.
Running around and Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd in the Legion, that sort of crap.
Yeah.
With the hanky down the back of the neck. And that's what they thought the Legion was. They didn't even know it still existed. And it went from there. Then a mate of mine, Krav, started taking off. You know, it seems in the martial arts every 2 or 3 years there's a new flavor of the month, right? It was originally Judo chops in Owlman Flint and James Bond, and then it became Billy Jack with Hapkido, then ninjas, and then, you know, Filipino martial arts had a little flurry. Then it was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, Krav popped up. So a mate of mine had gone off and joined Krav Worldwide, and he was trying to get me to join them. I didn't like some of the stuff they were doing. Their knife defense is horrendous. Their pistol stuff is questionable. And I won't teach something, right? Be part of an organization and be told you have to teach this when I know it won't work. Right. I just won't do that to my students. So eventually he left that organization. They lost a court case where they basically controlled the name Krav in America. And it opened up the floodgates to have your own Krav organization. And the second we could do that, we did. We modified a lot of the stuff that we thought was doubtful. And that's where it went.
Okay, perfect. So today you're teaching law enforcement, you teach some government people, and you also are teaching civilians, correct?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I'm not I mean, I have taught military, I have taught law enforcement, and I'm teaching civilians. We're looking now into we're going to branch out and set up a law enforcement training division because I've seen what's been happening to cops. Sure. And it pisses me off. The first 4 police officers that died on the job when I got to Charlotte was all because of shitty weapons retention. Absolutely. And I wish I could demo the move, man. It's horrible. All they taught them, I said to these cops I was training, like, what's your weapons retention? And they have them clamp down on the holster with one hand and then get on their radio and scream for backup with the other one. Yeah. And so you've got a 115-pound female officer fighting some 280-pound thug who's worked on a rock pile for the last 15 years, and he's trying to get her gun. And her defense is supposed to be put your hand on the holster and call for help. Right. I said, man, this is nuts. And 4 cops died over the course of about 6 years. 4 of them were killed. It was all because of weapons retention. And I said, you need to be carrying a tactical folder on your offside, right? When these guys go for your gun, you stab them with the other hand. And they said, we can't do that. Well, you probably remember about 7, 8 years ago, I think it was, the sheriff was attacked in California. Yes. And the wife of the guy fighting him was screaming like, kill him, kill him, kill him. And he pulled his tack folder out and stabbed the guy to death. And all these police departments around the country are suddenly being questioned by journalists like, this cop stabbed someone. Because civilians seem to forget if deadly force is justified, it's justified. That means I can run over the guy with an 18-wheeler. It doesn't matter how I kill him, right? If it's legal to kill him, it's legal to kill him. And so I had a cop call me from CMPD. It was funny. He said, well, you were 20 years ahead of the times. I said, what? And he said, you'll never guess the class we just did. They're now teaching us to carry a tack folder in the offside, carry and use it. And I said, yeah, 20 years too late. And what, 7 officers too late, sadly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we work with them. And I was on a very short list. I actually finished with the highest score for teaching 7th Special Forces Group in Bragg. You had to go down and demo to millions, an oversight committee from Washington, and a group of the military who then pick which person they want to go with. Sadly, I didn't know anything about this military contracting stuff, and I was up against the incumbent. And I found out later on it's pretty hard to beat those guys. The system is supposed to be fair, right? Every 5 years, you have to open the job up. But the reality is the incumbent had already bought all the equipment that I would have had to have paid for. He had all the training facility already set up that I would have had to have budgeted for. So even though I beat him on the score, I couldn't meet him, couldn't match him on price.
Yeah,
because he already had everything we would have had to have furnished. So
sure.
Yeah, I was a policeman for 28 years, and
okay,
and we
you know how it is then.
Yeah, and I sat on the board here in the state of Florida to assist in rewriting the defensive tactics curriculum, right? And very limited on what is being taught to our American law enforcement people, you know, and it's sad. And it hasn't changed a whole lot. I was a cop for 28 years. 1986, I went through the academy. And you're talking about the weapon retention. Oh, my God. You know, and I started on my own doing exactly what you just spoke about, carrying a folding knife on my support side, you know, to be able to cut this guy off the gun if I had to, you know. And you know, fortunately, I never had to use it. I had a couple incidences, but I think it's a real wise decision to be able to teach people that have to be able to defend themselves. Especially getting fear takes over. Somebody's trying to steal your gun. You're going to be scared to death to let go of that gun when you're trying to keep it in the holster. So you have to have that mindset of you know, how to shift to a secondary weapon. I agree with you 100% on that. So my next question is, with teaching.
Well, hang on. Let me interject there for a second, because you may have some insight into this. I have been told before that the reason the defensive tactics is so shitful is twofold. One, every time they train it, right, cops being the meatheads that they are, and they get into the training room and they want to beat the crap out of each other and they muscle everything instead of doing technique, that they get a lot of injuries, right, which puts them out on workers' comp, and the department's looking at that and going, every time we do this training, we lose, you know, 10% of our guys are home with jammed fingers and thumbs and wrenched shoulders and stuff. But the more insidious one, and I hope it's not true, I was told that, you know, when a policeman dies on the job, it costs the city about $3-4 grand to have a funeral, and it elicits a lot of sympathy from their public who are going, you know, those guys are on the front line for us and dying in the line of duty, versus what it costs them for a use of force lawsuit, which up here they just write them $1 million check. And every time someone says, you know, the cops beat me up, they tell us, the city just says, rather than go to court and fight it, they just go, look, here's $1 million.
Yeah.
So they would rather have the cop die than deal with the use of force report. So they really don't want him knowing anything that works that well. And I hope it's not true, but I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, it's again, like you said, we go into training. First off, you know, the longest period of time to learn defensive tactics for a law enforcement officer in the state of Florida is 40 hours, and that's in the academy. Wow. That's the academy. Okay. Yeah. Now they get cut loose. They go through a field training officer program, and then every year they get 4 hours.
Yeah, I talked to one at a seminar in Michigan once, and he said it's nuts. He said, I've been a cop. I think he was 15 years on the job. He said, I've pulled my weapon 4 times in 15 years. He said, I go hands-on with people every single day. He said, we have to qualify with our sidearm once a year. We never do any unarmed stuff. He said, I have to pay for that out of my own pocket.
Absolutely.
And that's crazy.
And Nick, I couldn't tell you how many thousands of dollars I've put out of my pocket over my career, going to firearms classes, going to defensive tactics classes, and also other entities of guys like you to learn survival techniques, how to fight, how to take care of myself out on the street, because it's very, very limited in the law enforcement world, you know. And with 4 hours of training once a year, it's basics. It's very basic. How to draw your baton, how to strike the pad, a little bit of handgun retention. God forbid, I was an instructor at my agency for a number of years. And God forbid you step outside the box and try to, like, I wrote some curriculum on groundwork, you know, and weapon retention on the ground. And I wrote up a full curriculum, got the okay to teach it at my agency, showed up, nobody. Wow. Nobody. And so, you know, it's also the mindset of the law enforcement officer, you know, you know, we get up, we get dressed every morning, we put our suit on, we go to work, and some of us pray we never have to put hands on somebody, right? Whereas, look, and like your friend said, I put hands on people every day, whether it's affecting an arrest or shaking somebody's hand, okay? And every day, more so than pulling and shooting someone or anything else. So, you know, being able to understand the conflict and to be able to put hands on somebody effectively it's really few and far between these days, you know, in this profession.
So I think there's another underlying, I know you got some more questions, but I think we could have a whole show on this one, that police departments got away with hiring the guys like Sean Connery epitomized in The Untouchables, right? The guy that grew up on the street with the kids he's going to have to arrest. He's interacted with people. You know, that was the old school police officer, right? These guys knew how to talk to people. And the police got away from that. They said, we want to get these college kids in who've sat in mummy's basement playing. Their whole concept of violence comes from Hollywood and video games. And then you give that kid a uniform and less training than a hairdresser gets and stick him in the street and throw him in the roughest part of town. And he's terrified. He doesn't know how to talk to anyone. And now he grabs his gun. Everything that can be resolved. You see the old school cops. It's like I put on that clip where I walked into the bar and said to the guy, you know, there's a woman waiting for you out the front, and they follow you outside. Right? And here are these kids terrified that are just, I watch them on these, you know, live PD police thing, walking up to a guy to ask him a question, and they've already got their gun out on him. And I'm like, that's nuts. And now we see all of these, you know, questionable shootings. And I'm like, God, you've got scaredy cats, basically, 20-year-old scaredy cats running around with a gun, putting them in the roughest part of town. What could go wrong? And I think police departments, again, the political nature of that beast screwed it for everybody. You need to get those kids back, like, you know, like you and the Connerys, the old Marines coming out looking for a job that know how to talk to people.
Right.
And I mean, any training is better than nothing, but at least if he takes a guy to the ground, which so much of your stuff is, right? You want to put it's what I tell people all the time. You're putting a non-compliant suspect in handcuffs, and it's you. The easiest way to do that is pin him to the floor and then do it. And if you can get any sort of a handle on that, like, you know, where you keep your weight, how you keep your hips down, keeping him pinned, getting someone's weight off of the top of you, then I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been there on the street, you know, where, you know, my Ju-jutsu background came in and helped me out quite a bit. With today's teachings, with Krav Maga, with your school, how do you adapt your teaching from when you were teaching in the military, when you were teaching law enforcement people? Now you're with teaching civilians. How do you adapt that to them?
And that is such an awesome question. One of the problems I had with the big player in the Krav industry was their defense, for example, against a headlock is to stick your finger in the guy's eye, pull it back, and punch him in the windpipe. If I'm fighting a Palestinian terrorist on a bus as an Israeli soldier, right, that's exactly what I would train my guys in the Legion to do, because the soldier's mission is to kill the other guy. Now, you live in the most litigious country in the world, and they never modified the program. So you're teaching a guy who's going on, there's two types of violence. There's social and asocial. And most violence that people are going to get involved in is what we call social violence, or what Rory Miller calls the monkey dance. And it's two guys in a bar, right, drunk, fighting over a girl. And you're not justified in sticking your finger in that guy's eye and punching him in the damn throat and crushing his hyoid bone and killing him. You need to modify those techniques for a civilian market. So we're one of the few Krav organizations that teaches an entire module on control and restraint. The research I have here from my local cops is that their biggest day for domestic violence call-outs is Thanksgiving, because you have the family members coming down, all living in the same house for a couple of weeks under the same roof. You know, your sister brings home the black sheep that stands out. Everyone gets a little bit of alcohol in them, and the fight breaks out. And off they go. Again, do you want your only response to be, I stick my fingers in his eyes, smash his windpipe, and kick him in the balls, right? You have to have those tools in your toolbox for those low-key situations where it's literally controlling, you know, the office Christmas party, and the guy grabs the girl on the way to the bathroom by the wrist because you want to really stick a sidekick through his knee and break it. You know, you have to have that low key. So we do that. We also cover, we have a whole block on the legal ramifications of what you're learning. Because we were told, you know, I tell my students, you got two fights you have to win. You have to win the legal fight, and you have to win the physical fight. And in this country, you're going to have to stand accountable for your actions, and you may have to win a legal fight, which in this country is horrible because you can get two of them, right? You have the criminal charge, and then you get the subsequent civil charge. Mm-hmm. And you better be able to win all of those, because I'm sorry, if you beat three guys in a bar and look like Jackie Chan on 6 cups of coffee, but you end up in prison for 11 years, did your instructor teach you self-defense?
You're absolutely right.
All he did was taught you how to fight.
Yes.
And there's a huge difference between those two things, and that's what I get into arguments with all the time. The kids doing BJJ are like, oh, this is all you need. And I'm like, you covering legal ramifications? Mm-hmm. Are you covering use of force? Are you covering, you know, how these guys pick their victims? All of this stuff that's got nothing to do with fighting.
Yes.
And they're not.
No, I agree 100%. I have a mentor in the law enforcement world who said, you know, you have, and it's very similar to what you just said. He said, you have three fights to win, to be whole. Number one, yes, actually the physical fight. You have to survive that, right? Then after that's done, yes, then there's, you know, I'm being sued either criminally or civilly, and I've got to win that. The third fight is I have to survive the psychological aspects of it also.
That's a great point.
You
Never
know,
even thought about that one.
Of oh my God, I just been through all of this, and you know, I won 2, and I'm damn lucky that I won those 2. You know, I'm breathing today, and I'm not in prison. And now it's a big mind fuck, because now I'm trying to survive the mental aspects of it also. And what I do here at my school is I bring a guy in who works for the state of Florida. He's the chief investigator for here in Palm Beach County. He's the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. And he's a friend of mine. He's a former law enforcement officer. I worked the streets with him, and he got into being an investigator with the state attorney's office. And I'll bring him in, and he'll put a chair down in the mats in the room, and I have people come in, my students come in, and we sit down and we discuss all the legal ramifications of at home, in-home self-defense, out on the street self-defense, whether it be empty hand or firearms. you know, and
Yep.
and I make this a full block for my students, so they understand that. Look, man, you know, and Nick, you're 100% right, man. You know, there's so many schools out there that teach. Let's just, you know, we're going to be kicking pads, we're going to be punching pads, we're going to be sparring, we're going to be knocking each other down on the ground, we're grappling, but nobody knows the legal ramifications. Nobody understands where we go after this, right? So I'm 100% on board with you, man.
100% on board.
We have two things to mention with that. One, I get my cops, when we do gun disarming once every 6 months, I'll get one of my police students. He will come with his police car. He'll do the lights and sirens pulling up to the back of the school.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a gun in your hand that you've just shot somebody. And we will now do the interaction with the police, because there's a lot of misinformation about that. You know, some guys say nothing at all. Well, that gives the other guy the right, you know, if his friends are standing around to give their narrative and you don't get to have a say. Right. And other people, you know, like start running their mouths and can talk themselves right into prison. So we go over the whole script of what you should and should not say. And we'll do it under that blue lights, you know, the flashing at the back and him in uniform asking what's going on. And the other thing we're talking about, and I don't know if you're familiar with the case, but recently the fireman that went away to prison for life, he had kids in his cul-de-sac screaming around, hooning in their cars. He went out to confront them. He took his pistol with him. And I don't know if Florida covers the AOJP, the ability, opportunity, jeopardy, and
absolutely.
Yep. Well, they had the ability to harm him. They had the opportunity. He was in jeopardy, right? And then when they ran at him in the front yard, he pulled his pistol out and shot him. And that's what screwed him, that damn reclusion. They asked him in court, why didn't you just go back inside the house and lock the door? I know when you can't answer that one. And so I have a saying in my book, because it's a lot to run through when you've been a cop. So, you know, when you're sitting there trying to deal with a split-second decision-making, violence, non-consensual violence going on, and you're trying to run through all this legal stuff you learned in the academy, I had to come up with some succinct way for my students to figure this out in a second. Is, am I fighting because I want to or because I have to? There's so many fights, ego-driven, right? I'm fighting because I want to. I got my girlfriend with me and someone looked at her and, you know, I'm going to show her I can kick someone's ass. And you go over, and I know a friend of mine in Australia did this. He killed the guy. They were mucking around with a girl in a bar and he chinned his mate, his best friend. And the guy went down, hit his head on the ground, brain bleed started. That guy died. He got 3 years for manslaughter. And if he'd said, you know, am I doing this because I have to or because I want to, that wouldn't have happened. Two people's lives wouldn't have been drastically affected. So yeah, if you don't nail that shut, and that's probably one of the biggest things I've seen coming from the military to civilians is that.
Absolutely, absolutely. What last question for you here, sir, and that is, with again going back to your civilians, with what you teach at your Krav Maga school, how do you get them educated in the survival mindset? Meaning, when they're out and about, how do you get across to them situational awareness, survival mindset if something does happen, that they have an encounter? How do you speak to them about that and get that across?
Number one, the biggest thing in the world, and you would have seen this, again, we're going back to law enforcement. When I've taught law enforcement, the first thing I ask the guys who were there is, who are my prisoners? And by that, I mean, who are the guys who are here because they have to be here, right? It's part of their continuing education, or you got told by the department, you have to go down and do this training, right? And there are guys in the back of the room that don't want to do the training. They have to. They're mandated, right? I ask, who are my prisoners, right? And, you know, you get 3 or 4 guys down the back. And I'm like, all right, you know, you don't want to be here. I don't really want you here either. So let's go through the motions. You sit down the back and let us get on with it, and everyone's happy. The good thing about my students is they already have the motivation taken care of because they're paying to come to me to learn. So in a sense, they have an idea that, right, I need to know how this works, and I'm going to go pay the professional to teach me. So that's a big step up. Secondly, we use a lot, and I think this is something that's missing in so many schools. We use a shit ton of scenario training.
There you go.
Playing videos, real live videos of what's happening out in the world. So we can show the people, and we watch and go, look, here's a person with their head in their phone, right? So what we call task fixation in my book. Eyes are the number one defensive thing, and so many of these kids are walking around with their eyes buried in their phone. And your next one is probably your hearing, and they've got earphones that's shoved in their ears. And I show them clips of those people where predators come up and hit them. And we analyze, you know, if they had been looking around, they wouldn't have been targeted. You have done, and I probably need to do it again, where we'll go into the local shopping center on a Saturday, and I'll get some mates of mine that will role play. And I'll tell them, and I do this a lot with the girls, you know, some of my mates are here. You don't know what they look like. They're going to be tailing you around today. It's your job to spot them. And you make it a game.
Yeah.
And I've always found that's a better way to teach this stuff anyway. Don't try and scare people to death, right? Make it again. And people should be doing with their children as well. Like, you know.
Sure, absolutely.
If you know how many people are in the Starbucks, well, you turn around to your kid and go, how many people are in here, right? And he can give you that answer. There's 8, right? He's already looked at everyone in that room. And then you start trying to identify how many of them have got tactical folders in their pockets, you know, things like that. Just make games out of this stuff. And yeah, I think going back to your question though, yes, the motivation is the biggest part. You can take the horse to water, you can't make him drink. So when I have those guys coming that want to be there, it makes my job so much easier. And then showing them the videos, illustrating the examples of what happens if you don't do this. I'm sure you've seen that horrific clip of the 2 cops being gunned down in Puerto Rico. It looks like a bakery or a jewelry store.
Yes.
You know, we teach the 4 pre-fight indicators, right? So the guy playing with his face, where are his hands, the weight shifting, and the dancing around, right? And if you see those big 4, you know something's about to go down. And I look at those cops and I go, why didn't someone teach them that in their academy? That takes me 15 minutes to teach that block of training. We role play it. I have people coming up looking around, and then I have them looking around and touching their face. Then I have them looking around, touching their face, shifting, you know, ball of foot to ball of foot, and then the blading of body, right? The old, I know you've seen that a million times. They drop the right foot back, and you know, here we go. And we watch that clip, and I tell them, if these cops had done that 15 block you just did, they'd be alive today. And that sort of hits home and makes them more serious about it.
Excellent. All right, sir. Nick, how can people reach out to you? How can we find you?
Mate, there's 2 ways. One, my school website has the way to get in touch with email. That's warriors with an S, warriorsKravMaga.com. Okay. They can also get me on nickhughes@gmail. Okay. They're hands down the 2 best ways to get through to me.
Perfect. All right, sir. That's going to be a wrap. I appreciate you coming on, giving me your time. And if I get up your neck of the woods, I'm definitely knocking on your door.
Not a problem, brother. It was great.
All
Thanks,
right, man.
mate.
Take care of yourself, buddy. Take care. Thank you.
All right.